Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on environmental sustainability programs and staff and community well-being. We're so pleased that you're all joining us for the webinar. If you'd like to introduce yourselves in the chat, feel free to put your name, your organization, where you're located. Yeah, we're going to jump right in. So I'll just do a quick introduction of myself, and then I'm going to pass it to our panel colleagues here. So I'm Eric Havel, five-year volunteer with museumexpert.org since 2020. I'm also an environmental education and climate literacy facilitator, coordinator, program developer with an organization here in the San Francisco Bay Area called the Community Resources for Science. So I've been doing climate literacy work with students and adults for the better part of 30 years, and just it's my passion, and I'm so excited that I have a panel that shares this passion, and really exploring the intersection of environmental programs and our own personal well-being. So with that, I'm gonna just pass it on. I'd like to introduce each panelist and have them share a little bit more detail about themselves. So we're gonna start with Molly Jobson, and she's the executive director of the Morgan Log House, located in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. So Molly, I'll turn it to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic. I think museums should be thinking about including the environmental aspect and environmental history in part of our storytelling that we do every day on our site. So as Eric said, I currently serve as the executive director for Morgan Log House Historical Society, located in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. We're a 1774 Germanic log house. The land that the house is built on was first settled in 1708 by the Morgan family through the William Penn Charter. And our site was an active farm from 1708 all the way till 1960. So we have a huge agriculture history here on our site, which for years has not been utilized to its full potential. So when I came in October of 2023, and I started my career in history working with the U.S. Forest Service at Gray Towers National Historic Site. It's the only historic home managed by the U.S. Forest Service, but it was the summer home to Gifford Pinchot, who was the first chief of the U.S. Forest Service. So that is environmental history has always been part of my career in the historical world. So it's really exciting to be here and kind of talk to you about the different ways that I've woven it in and the benefits that I see from it. And I should probably say a little bit about myself. I have an undergrad in history and cultural anthropology from Ripon College in Ripon, Wisconsin, and a master's in public and applied history through Southern New Hampshire University. And I'm originally from Wisconsin. So a little bit about me.
Great, thanks so much, Molly. And just a little bit of housekeeping. Our founder for Museum Expert, Walter Stavelo, is with us, and he is monitoring the chat. If you have questions that you come up along the way, please feel free to drop those in chat, and we'll make sure to leave ample time at the end of our kind of Q&A with our panelists to address many of those questions. So I'm going to move over to our next panelist, Adrienne Bueno, with the Quest Science Center, located here near me, about 30 minutes from me, here in Livermore, California, kind of pushing out towards the Central Valley of California, if those of you that know the Bay Area. So welcome, Adrienne.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me here with you all. It's an honor to be able to speak to you all about environmental sustainability and climate change in our museum and science center realm. A little bit about myself. I'm a second generation Chicano from Oakland. So I graduated from California State University East Bay with a BA in environmental studies and a minor in statistics. And I think just because of my proximity to our historic wetlands and marshlands there in Oakland, that really inspired me to kind of get into this world of environmental studies. And while at CSU East Bay, I did some work on climate literacy, research on climate literacy. That's actually how I came into contact with Quest Science Center. There was a shared shared interest and uh, there's a shared interest in climate literacy. And so from there, I was able to come on board as the planetary health program coordinator, help them guide and add some structure, manage the program so that way our interns are able to effectively um, tackle these climate action projects that they have. A little bit about Quest Science Center, though. We are really our vision is to connect everyone to the value of science and to improve lives, and to improve our communities' lives and around our world as well. Specifically, Quest believes that everyone should have access to knowledge, skills, and understanding needed to navigate and thrive in a changing climate future, right? So that's where I come in to help aid in that vision. At the moment, Quest is creating programs to mobilize future generations to take action to improve our community, and our planetary health initiatives are definitely one of the 4 program areas that are helping to achieve that. So, we have right now 54 dedicated interns who are working on 6, 7 different climate action projects, and so that's why we're here and able to talk about this space of staff well-being, community well-being, connected to climate change.
Great. Thanks so much, Adrian. That's a great introduction, and definitely appreciate this emerging science center in Livermore, and all the exciting things that you're focused on and aspiring to become. Our last panelist, I'd like to give a warm welcome to Cedar Barg. They're joining us from the Wild Center. They're the climate network manager at the Wild Center in Tupper Lake, New York. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Cedar.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cedar. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the climate network manager at the Wild Center. We are a science center and sort of nature center mashup in upstate New York, and we're in the heart of the Adirondack Park in Tupper Lake. The Adirondack Park is a 6 million acre state park in upstate New York. We're really lucky to be situated in such a beautiful part of the state. We have forest, wetlands, mountains, rivers, lakes, lots of places to recreate and really connect with nature. And that's actually part of our mission at the Wild Center is connecting people with nature for a thriving natural world. And so at the Wild Center, we do a lot of things. As you can imagine, being situated in a state park has a lot of opportunities. Um, my work specifically is with our climate program. So similar to what Adrian was just sharing, we also work very closely with youth in our community. And we, back in 2009, started hosting youth climate summits at our museum. And so there are lots of folks, including Quest Science Center, that are part of our summit network that I'll talk a little bit more about, hopefully, as we get into the panel. But yeah, I would say that working with young people, especially in a rural community, is super essential work for creating a more just future for everyone, and is something that I'm really passionate about. I've worked with teens for the last 10 years, specifically in supporting their climate action projects that they do. But also I'm really interested in building authentic youth adult partnerships and really thinking about how we can approach climate solutions from an intergenerational lens. So really happy to be here, honored to be on the panel with Molly and Adrian.
Great. So thanks so much, Cedar. You really introduced a number of topics that I hope we can address, along the way during our conversation. It's fantastic. So again, thank you all 3 of you for being here. Thank you to and I was just kind of scanning the participants. We've got folks from Oklahoma, from DC, from here in Chico in California. So we've got a nice array of folks joining us from across the country. So my first question for the panel, and feel free to just popcorn in, or I can give some direction if you want in terms of who would like to share first. But um, please share information about how you see your sustainability programs and initiatives that you're leading, and how they might intersect with that idea of staff well-being. So And feel free to frame that any way you like. If there is a specific challenge that you see with staff well-being that you think, working with environmental programs, sustainability programs might help address. So I'll just leave it open there, but I'm glad to add a little there. Anyone want to start the conversation with us?
Yes, I can. I'll jump in first. I'm always the one that will jump in first. So I guess I should kind of introduce you to a little bit of how the site itself is kind of broken up. So I'm actually a one-woman show. So when I think about staff, it's not just, paid staff, it's volunteers. And I think sometimes getting a volunteer's well-being and their connection is a little more difficult than a staff, because the staff is there all the time. They're living, they're breathing the site, they're constantly connected to it. And yes, there are ways that we can, as managers, as leaders, we can change that. And one thing that when I'm looking at the environment and I'm putting together environmental programs, I want to make sure that it ties to the history of our site. So not only can we understand the environmental impacts of the past, what's happening today, and then what we can learn from the past to hopefully better tomorrow. And I think that helps connect the dots. And the more of that connecting the dots, the more you include your volunteers, include your staff in that development of those environmental programs, the more tied they're going to be, the more excited they're going to be, and the more excited you are to do work and to be at work. I feel it is rewarding, and that in itself influences my staff's well-being and my volunteers' well-being, because if they feel like they are in part of that process and developing that environmental program, and we're making sure it's topics that they want to hear and that they want to talk about. Because when you're looking at environmental issues and different things that you can approach, there are so many different branches you can go down. But if you are really including your staff or your volunteers or anyone part of that building block process, the more ownership and the deeper of the connection they're going to have, not only to your site, but to the program that you're doing. So that's kind of my first idea that popped into my head, and hopefully gets the rest of the panelists kind of adding on. But I hope that kind of answered it a little bit of what you're looking for.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. Adrian or Cedar, any additional thoughts? I've got a few that come to mind, but I'd like to center your thoughts.
Yeah, so I think for Quest, right? And we're sort of in a similar boat as Molly in terms of not having a full staff on board. What we do have is a strong mentor volunteer base, right? And a lot of our mentors come from our retirees, right? And they come from the Sandia National Lab and Lawrence Livermore National Lab in Livermore. Um, and that's actually though that group of retirees is actually who started Quest Science Center, right? And so that's why we have this big focus on connecting everyone to the value of science. Now, what we have been able to give the staff that we do have and the mentors, mentor volunteers is connect with community through programs, right? Through at school programs, after school programs, community events. I mean, for example, just on April 12th, we had our big culminating community experience where we had over 3,000 attendees join us at our local county fairgrounds. So there were exhibitors, over 60, 70 exhibitors there who shared their innovations in STEM, who shared their innovations in education and gave opportunities to have hands-on learning. Now, when we think about and shift over to our climate program, right? That was sort of an organic process, and that really started because of what the Wild Center was doing over on the East Coast, right, with their youth climate summits. I mean, Our board members and mentor volunteers, Rick Student and Vaughn Dragoo, attended one of these webinars with Aztec Seeding Action and heard about this, brought it to the students that were interns and were participating at Quest Science Center at the time, and say, hey, why don't we do our own? Why don't we throw our own Youth Climate Summit? So over 200 attendees actually came to this event, and there were primarily students, right, from over 10 different high schools. So that was huge, and I think that was really a really eye-opening experience, not only for the students but for the mentors as well, because a lot of our mentor volunteers had worked in this space of climate science, physics, engineering, so they understood the value of centering climate change in the science center, right? And making sure that our youth have an outlet to be able to learn, first of all, and express the sort of feelings that they have connected to climate change. So that involved our students after the event, where our student interns after the event asked, why stop here, right? And so they self-organized with some of our with guidance from our mentor volunteers to create 6-7 different climate action projects. And along with those climate action projects, the students, we sort of adopted this name for this informal program that we initially had, right? And that came out to be the Tri-Valley Youth Climate Action Program, or TVYCAP for short. We realized that with this program, we needed a set of goals, and the students definitely helped with creating these goals. And it was to increase youth awareness and understanding of climate change, promote meaningful science-based climate action, and create a united community of like-minded youth. And while these goals are targeted to our youth, our interns, this has also been very important for our mentor volunteers and staff members, right? I mean, our mentor volunteers have felt a new sense of purpose collaborating with our interns, and so this has definitely morphed into an intergenerational approach, just as I think Cedar had mentioned as well, right? We're able to blend together these two age demographics together, and provide the right amount of guidance while also giving our students autonomy. And so one of these projects that came out of that was our climate literacy resolution, which I'm hoping to talk about a little bit more, but I'll pass it off to Cedar.
I just want to add one thing listening to you talk, and something that, even like a connection between the two is, when you were developing your program, you really opened it up to let your volunteers, to let your mentors really dictate where they wanted to go. And you really included them in that process. And I think that is key. And I just wanted to highlight that you brought that up as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing all of these overlapping frameworks between our three centers, right? And I think that's the beautiful part about having this panel and being able to talk about it, because we're all able to blend these different aspects together and draw from each other. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. Oh, go for it, Eric.
I was just gonna say,
okay.
your thoughts. Yep.
Yeah, I was just gonna I'll be short, but Adrian and Molly, it's amazing that you do the work that you do with the staff capacity that you have. So I just want to commend that. First and foremost, I am fortunate at the Wild Center. We have like 45 full-time staff, so we're a pretty large employer for our rural community of 2,000 and surrounding towns. And we also, so my team, we have 5 staff, and then the rest of the staff are kind of more museum focused staff, development, et cetera, kind of classic museum roles. But I'll just say our building at the Wild Center is a LEED certified building. And so we use our campus, kind of what you were talking about, Molly, like always connecting those lessons back to the place. We definitely use our facilities as a like teaching and learning tool for the groups that come, especially school groups, and like at the Youth Climate Summit are 2 good examples of where we're really highlighting the use of our building. So we have like a solar array, we have a community scale composter, we have sort of green trail tour that you can do at our site, where we highlight like different restoration practices that we're doing. So we really try to be a example for our community of like how the place and the like actual structure of buildings, which are a really energy intensive process, and can have a huge footprint, like in our, especially in a rural community. So yeah, we definitely utilize our campus and our grounds as a way to talk about and sustainability with our visitors. And I would say like on our team specifically, the climate team, we work really collaboratively. And I think that kind of stems from the work we do in the climate space. The climate space is very collaborative. Like I see very little competition. Like even Adrian, like doing a youth climate summit, right? It's like we're doing this work together. And I feel so connected to that network of other people who are doing this work in their own sites. And so I feel like that kind of trickles into our like staff culture on our team of like, we run meetings very cooperatively. We like are very explicit about having a cooperative leadership model as a part of our team meeting structure. We make decisions collaboratively, and we're also, to Adrian's point, kind of including current teens and alumni of our program in those decision processes too. They help us edit grants, they help us write toolkits, they help represent us when we can't be there in person at different youth climate summits or events. We'll send our alumni to represent us. So I think like just those connected networks are so essential to the work that we do. And I think that really stems from being centered in a like sustainability an environmentally minded institution, and that's a part of this broader network.
Thanks so much, Cedar. I think you really hit on a really nice connector just in what you just said, this idea that, we're not competing to save the environment, we're working collectively to save it. And I just wanted to pick up on a couple themes that I heard many of you talking about, and we've also really uplifted in Museum Expert over the last 5 years. So the one about decentralized leadership and inclusion, has been huge for us, because as COVID hit, many of us, the inception of Museum Expert was the idea that there were many professionals that lost their jobs, and we wanted to give them opportunity to kind of rebuild their careers and recognize how much knowledge and how many great skill sets these folks have and how they're transferable, not just within the museum community, but beyond. And so, and one of those things is really about what you each really shared, this idea of we all have voice and we all have something to bring to the table. And this idea so that's one strand I just wanted to uplift. And the other was the idea of walking the walk and showcasing our physical plants as learning opportunities, learning labs, if you will, that Cedar, what you shared about composting on site and leveraging the outdoor nature space as a place just to be. And at the log house, similarly, doing that kind of using the outdoors. In my old center at Chabot, we had redwood forest right adjacent to the center. And we would do that. We'd bring them out and we'd do programs there. So I think that piece is amazing. And then the last piece that maybe we can spend a little time on is not reinventing the wheel, especially in the climate space. There's a huge ecosystem of resources and environmental education programs, sustainability programs. And so this example that Adrian shared, that what you've developed is this incredible toolkit for running youth climate summits at the Wild Center. And now that's become a international tool. We've had youth from all over the world engaging and using that toolkit to run their program. And this is and I really appreciate you each uplifting the idea of youth as allies, and Molly, our volunteers as allies, that we want to support them, in their work and really be listening to where those learners are and what excites them, what motivates them, what are their concerns about the environment and climate change. So those are some things I just really wanted to call out that I really heard each of you saying. Yeah, and anything come to mind as you further unpack some of those things? And I might couch this all in the framework of empowerment, right? That by doing these things, we are empowering our museum communities, the staff, the youth, the attendees of events. We're empowering them to lead, right, through listening and through supporting initiatives that are collectively kind of manifesting for us.
And I just kind of want to add on to what Eric said, and I'm speaking more of from like a historic home museum instead of, from a science center that, focuses on environmental programs. So for when I am looking at these types of things, it is a shift, especially for a historic home museum. You get board members or the public saying, how does the environment actually tie to the past? And so if there are other historic home museums out there, figure out, was your house built on a spring? Why was your house built where it was built? What resources would they have needed to use during that colonial time? So even one of my activities when I have kids here, we have a creek. And as I said, it was a working farm for its whole life. So one of the activities we have is basically just kids carrying pails of water just to show the importance of water. And my site and a couple other sites in the area, we're in the process of developing this curriculum that can be crossed over between all of our sites, but it's addressing this idea of how water shaped our nation, because that really played a role in where all of our cities were set up, how our cities were set up. So that's even, and many people, when they're looking at things from a historic side point, they forget to think about these types of things. And it's something that's really easily woven into your story. And so another environmental thing, when people are on the house, we are a log house. People can't even begin to wrap their minds around how large the trees would have been here in Pennsylvania, because our state was hit probably the hardest through the clear cutting movement. So most of the trees we have here are babies compared to the trees that would have been here. But then again, that's another story. So as a historian, and I'm guilty of it myself, we need to think outside of the box to bring these things in. So, we have an exhibit about fashion. So let's talk about how our current fashion exhibit is actually, or how our current fashion industry is having a huge impact on our environment. And what can we learn and implement from what our colonial friends did in our modern society? So instead of throwing out clothes right away, can they be mended? Can they be turned into other things? So it's those little touches. And I think sometimes when people think, oh my gosh, I have to add in a whole environmental program, it doesn't need to be a whole program. Are there ways that we can take little nuggets and weave them into the story that we're already telling? So to go along, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to develop a brand new program. We have a colonial kitchen garden on the site. And so throughout this whole year, every month, I'm going to be adding probably another 6 plants. Each one of those plants are going to get a QR code and their own website. So when you're walking on the site, whether or not you have a tour guide or not, you can walk into our colonial kitchen garden, scan that QR code, find out the history of the plant, what it was used for, and a recipe to try at your home. So you don't have to do everything overnight. I'm doing that as a one-woman show. I'm like, okay, I can realistically make a website for 5 plants a month and keep growing it. So don't think that you have to do these all overnight. Take little chunks and begin weaving them in.
Yeah, I'm picking up on that, Molly. I really appreciate that. Not reinventing the wheel. Maybe for Adrian and Cedar, because you're in different places with staff and Quest, aspiring to have a facility. Describing a little bit more, Cedar, about the climate summit process and the way that you drive that, and the way that you leverage, as you shared, like Molly's been sharing, the outdoor facility, including that in that experience. Because as Quest emerges and Livermore is a very urban area, so it's a different environment, but I think it might stimulate, Adrian, some thoughts about that place-based use of what's around you, you know. So yeah, just
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that question, Eric. So, yeah, like I said, we've been doing youth climate summits at the Wild Center since 2009, and I'll just say we have a nice like kind of narrative story about how the summit started. But essentially, a young person in our community named Zach went to a climate summit that was not a youth climate summit, was just sort of a climate gathering at the Wild Center for community members. And he was one of the only young people who was present at that event. And so he approached my boss, Jen, and one of his teachers after this and said, hey, we should do this for young people in our community. And they were like, that's a great idea. Let's do it. So a year later, teachers, students, and Wild Center staff collaborated to host this event at the Wild Center. And I'll say, like, we're a museum, like we're not set up to be a convening space necessarily. So we really retrofit our event to the space. Like we have to set up tons of chairs. Like it's a big like to do for us to like set the museum up in a way that we can host the summit. But yeah, so we started doing these events. We've been doing them since 2009. We now have a very established summit where we have 25 to 30 schools from a 2-hour radius away from the Wild Center will commute to our 2-day event. It's always hosted in November. And to your point, Eric, we really utilize the space as a teaching tool during the summit itself. So we have one of our featured exhibits right now is a climate solutions exhibit. And that exhibit was sort of co-developed with the Yale Climate Communications SASE survey. So we surveyed our visitors and we said, what are your views on climate change? And we also surveyed the staff and said, what do you think the visitors' views on climate change are? And it was really interesting. Our staff community said that visitors would not be as concerned about climate change as they actually were. And so it was really good that we actually were able to see that bias that our staff had and say, hey, like actually we need to use this data to inform what we're going to do for our climate solutions exhibit. And so that exhibit is very story based. We share stories from different change makers and people doing climate work across the Adirondack Park. And the reason for that is because people who are in the alarmed and concerned category about climate change often feel a sense of panic and inaction, paralysis. And one of the best ways to reach them is by sharing stories of what people are doing so that they can see themselves in those stories and take action themselves. So we actually have workshops in our climate solutions space at the summit. We've had people who are featured in that exhibit be workshop leaders, which is really cool. We also we've done green building tours as a workshop at the summit. We often have a composting workshop. That's like a really great example of a climate action that schools can try to implement at their schools. And so, yeah, we really try to show in the workshops at the summit, like, what are the possibilities for you to take action in your communities when you return back to your school? And we give them time to plan with their team. So our summit, we have 5 students and 1 teacher from each school come. And the purpose for that is it's typically a club or a subset of like a class that comes together. And so there's already a group, a dedicated group that wanted to come to this event who can then plan a climate action project together. And so, yeah, we really use our space, like our climate solutions exhibit, the green features on our campus to highlight what they might be able to do for their climate action projects. And I would say like the other way we do that is through a resource share fair. So we invite a ton of local organizations who have opportunities for teens to get involved to come and table. And so in addition to those more deep dive workshops, we also have an opportunity for them to talk to professionals about internships, volunteer opportunities, because we know we can't serve every single student who is at the summit. And all of these other organizations are doing really great work with teens in the Adirondacks and beyond as well. So that's another touch point for them to get project ideas, potentially connect with future jobs. And I would say that's another thing that we're seeing in the Youth Climate Summit sort of network broadly, is this connection to workforce development, and how that's equally as important as like, what are you doing right now? And how can that build towards what you do next? And really trying to share a wide variety of pathways. We know not all of our students are college bound, and they shouldn't be, right? If that's not their path. There are tons of climate jobs everywhere. We like to say like every job is a climate job, if you make it a climate job. And I feel like that connects back to like what Molly was saying too, of you can weave those themes in, no matter what you're doing. It doesn't have to be like a youth climate summit, right? It could be a history summit and you're talking about environmental themes, right? So I think that's what we try to focus on as well. It's climate is connected to everything. Environmental topics are connected to everything. And so really trying to bring in that interdisciplinary moment and be creative. Like we have a summit who works with their local professional men's soccer team, and they fund their climate action projects. Like what a great way to get like teens who are interested in sports connected to climate work, right? Like there's all these entry points that we can really creatively weave into the work that we're doing.
Thanks so much, Cedar. Really appreciate that. And I would like to touch on that interdisciplinary moment that you mentioned, and the idea of climate action being a way to mitigate climate anxiety, especially among our young folks, but also along the alarmed group. But Adrian, anything mapping over for you from what Cedar shared, as you've run a climate summit, but without a facility. So anything kind of resonating with you? And then after that, I think there's some questions that I know we'd like to look at in the chat.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there were a number of points that I think really resonated with myself and with Quest, right, from both Molly and Cedar. And I think while we are a pretty urban space in Livermore, right, that I don't think that stopped us from definitely thinking about how our students or our mentors think about these climate action projects, right? I think what we've seen really is that the interns want to do something that impacts their community and actually means something to them, right? I mean, there are a number of projects that we have kind of helped to facilitate, so that way interns feel more connected to that. It's not just telling our students to recycle, or to use, I guess, their transportation, right? Other modes of transportation. It's also about identifying, okay, what climate phenomenon are we actually feeling here in the area, and then how can we tackle that? I mean, one example is the heat mapping initiative that with the interns and the mentors have really took off with, right? And it gets really hot in Livermore. I mean, there are days over the summer where it's 100 degrees, over 100 degrees. And each and every single member of the Tri-Valley region, which Livermore is a part of, is impacted by that. So the students were interested in, how do we understand this? Well, what is an urban heat island effect, right? And how has that developed over time? And it's been looking at the infrastructure, the built infrastructure in our urban community, and using data to actually map out what that looks like. I mean, the interns and the mentors have gone ahead and developed very unique low cost sensors, right? And the idea behind that is they don't just want to be able to do this in the Livermore community. They want to be able to spread this out across the nation, across California, where everyone else is being impacted by extreme heat events. And that's really touching on a point of climate justice, right? Being able to serve not just their immediate smaller tight-knit communities, but also all of these peripheral communities that make up Livermore, that make up a specific region, right? that's just one way we're connecting to place. Another way is interns were interested in methane, right? In methane emissions. Well, in Livermore, there were oil fields for a brief period of time, right? So it's exploring what those oil fields look like, what was the historic context about that, and even going beyond just oil fields, but looking at landfills, looking at okay, what are some natural methane sources? And so we actually have one of or the biggest Sycamore Grove Park in California in Livermore. It's over 850 acres. And so students students and mentors alike go there, to enjoy that scenery. And they don't, a lot of people weren't aware that there was actually a methane spring just over across from one of the trails. And so the students went with mentors to actually measure if there was methane seeping out of that spring. And so come to find out after a few visits, that was the case, right? So these place-based explorations have definitely led us or led the students to connect to climate action in a more localized way. And I think this has really opened up pathways for one of our bigger initiatives, which I mentioned earlier, the climate literacy initiative, right? And so our students, while they had these goals in mind, they were interested in actually impacting a broader set of students. And so um, through this organic relationship with CSU East Bay, which is where I came from, and California passing AB 285 requiring public schools to teach climate change from grades 1 through 12, that really launched this project forward in creating a climate literacy resolution. And you'll see that the resolution isn't just from a top-down approach. It was really developed by the students. So you'll see their fingerprints, the language specific to students, right, in that resolution. They collaborated with school board members, with teachers, with educators to figure out, okay, how do we make this resolution so that way it's not prescriptive, right? Because we know that resolutions all the time can be very prescriptive, and there's tons of jargon, and then that's what the students didn't want. And our mentors were able to assist in that language, right? Assist in guiding how those conversations go with the different community partners. So eventually that was passed, right? And now with that resolution being passed, the interns are realizing that this is a systemic change that they're able to enact in their own community, right? So it's sort of these other projects are kind of pilots to what climate literacy can look like in the actual school districts, right? So we're kind of testing out these different topics that really resonate with students and figuring out how can maybe the school district take some of these projects and these topics and then meld it as a lens to be able to teach other subject areas, right? I mean, there's this intergeneration or disciplinary approach that Cedar brought up. And I think that's definitely the best way. We think that's the best way to teach climate science. It's not just adding another subject into curriculum, but being able to talk about social studies, about history, about biological sciences through this climate lens. And so again, these projects have been sort of a testing ground for that. And we have students who are actively looking at the NOAA's climate literacy guide, who are actively looking at different lesson plans that they're coming around and saying, hey, like, why don't we learn this now, right? Why don't we implement this now? How can we make this a lot more digestible to not just us, the kids in the program, but to K through 12 in the wider region? So it's definitely that place that local context that we're trying to view this and how, or at least our program, and not reinventing the wheel, right? I mean, we're really just getting started with this program, and we're definitely taking pages out of everyone's books and trying to give acknowledge everyone who has helped us on the way. I mean, we have the Wild Center who's helped us with that, other members from Aztec who we've talked to. There are tons of webinars that we're constantly going to just to learn what different models are really working. How can we include our students more? How can we include mentors in this organic process so that way everyone feels like they're being served in a way that actually means something. And I think that leads to that satisfaction. That leads to the satisfaction, not only within our staff, but our mentor volunteers, our students, because they are deepening their understanding. They are feeling like they are engaging in climate action that means something. They are building community with each other. I mean, this year we had a cohort of 54 interns from 7 different schools, and that went beyond just Livermore, right? That we had students or interns come from Pleasanton and Dublin, which were neighboring cities, and even Tracy, which is over, which is another city over and in an entirely different region, right? And these students are building community with each other. They're realizing that they're not alone. And I think that's one of the most important and powerful pieces to what the program is doing and what these programs from other science centers and museums are I think cultivating, right? That network, a mycelium network of strong individuals who aren't alone anymore. And so we're trying to track how this program is impacting our students. Is it deepening their understanding? Do they feel more hope after after they've completed this program? There's this bit about what is it, workforce development that I heard from Cedar, right? Do students and do these interns see themselves becoming climate scientists or environmental stewards or any one of these jobs that can definitely fit in this as a climate job, right? As a climate career pathway. And I just wanted
Adrian, I
to
might,
add that.
sorry to interrupt. I
No,
wanted to
I was actually done.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really appreciate all those thoughts. I just wanted to make sure we center some of the questions in chat too, which I think relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because of this empowerment, this idea that youth want to take action. So I want to start with the last question that came up. Any challenges with current federal administration pushback on climate programs? And I know Cedar had some thoughts. I just wanted to center that first in the chat. I put those climate literacy principles, Adrian, that you referred to. And basically, they're exactly what you described. They're exciting, they're new, they're just out as of last year, and they've built a much larger umbrella for the idea of teaching climate literacy. It's not just about the science anymore, it's about the social aspects, about mitigating climate anxiety, about empowerment and listening to different communities. So that social science that you shared. But we know that there's a challenge right now that climate is often getting scrubbed at the national level from language. Really, this document that I shared is no longer available via the NOAA portal, but we will put it on the Museum Expert website. And many people are from the ground up posting this very document, which is incredible. It's 15 years later, the last set of principles, I think, was 2009 and was really climate science centric. This is the larger umbrella of climate justice and all those things that you were mentioning, all those valuable pieces. So I would encourage the folks on the webinar not to be discouraged by the national landscape right now, because there's so much momentum happening, so many tools out there, and states, certain states, have these resolutions at even this, like you said, with 283, at California mandating climate literacy across the 1st through 12th grade. New Jersey's leading the pack, New York, Washington State, Oregon. So there's all these case studies at the state levels, and then there's individual communities, even within states that you think might not be wanting to take action in this space. There's many exemplars for that too. So I just want to let folks know we may be in this place of one step back, but it's going to lead us to be stronger and to resist this idea of scrubbing information and scrubbing reality and scrubbing truth, right? So I think, all of us can support. I really appreciated the sentiment around collaboration. So I don't know, Cedar, you had a thought, and then Walter.
Yeah, and before Cedar jumps into it, I just have a really quick pivot because I know she is definitely going to be talking about, because I'm sure you get federal funding and getting impacted from that. But I know there's a lot of fear around our administration, and especially around all of our different cultural institutions. And one thing that I just kind of stress to everyone is that be creative. Have fun. That's when those interdisciplinary studies can come in, because that's when you can start weaving that climate narrative in there, but you're not talking about climate. So you're still moving the story forward. We just have to be a little bit more creative of how we weave it within our narrative. So don't be disturbed. Like, I know every time I look at the news, I'm like, oh my God. But it's giving us an opportunity to be creative, and also remember that not only us are seeing this, the public's seeing this. And we are seeing that the public is starting to get concerned about these types of things. And it is a hard topic. We just have to figure out how we just broach it from a different angle. And we just have to make sure we stay pivot and honest to our mission. And that's going to be what's going to get us through. But I'm sure Cedar will talk more from the federal impact. But I just wanted to throw that out real quick.
Yeah, thanks, Holly. I agree with what you said, and I think it's also important for the cultural institutions who really have centered climate, like us, to continue doing that. And we know that our visitors are concerned about this, and so we need to keep talking about it, and especially now, in this time of sort of a lot of the funding and support for this work is disappearing, right? It's tough. I'm not gonna lie to you. We lost 2 federal grants, one to support museum educators, one that supports our year-round teen program. That was a real tough blow for us. I think something that has kept me going through this really difficult time. I mean, it was interesting thinking about coming into this webinar and talking about staff well-being, because I'm like, my team is struggling right now. We are having a hard time. So I just want to, like, I think it's important that we talk about that too, that we don't glaze over that this is really, really tough. And like, we can be here and show up for each other. And we also need to take care of ourselves right now, right? Like, I've been really thinking about what can I do to like not take a step back from work when I'm not working and like turn it off. Like, I've had to do some like recon in my life. Like, I've stopped using social media. I'm very careful about what news outlets I'm consuming, right? But I think something that one of my colleagues at another organization said to me, 2 things. One is our funding can get taken away, but our relationships remain. And I think that is so important to remember. And yes, getting the funding taken away, I don't want to glaze over the fact that is, you know, that's
Horrible.
how we do the work, right? Yeah. But I think it is important to remember that our relationships are still there, and now more than ever, we need to lean into that collaborative spirit of museums and community work and climate work. It's so important. And then the other thing is like that I'm hearing from my partners at federal agencies is share your story, share the ways that you're impacted, be honest with your staff, be honest with your community, and don't be afraid to share those stories, because if no one is sharing, that's exactly what the intention
They
is
want.
from taking away the funding, right? Is to silence and to stop the work, and that's not going to happen. And so I just want to encourage anybody else who's on the call who's had these impacts. You know, we're a big museum compared to Adrian and Holly, but we're still a relatively small museum compared to some others. And we're in a very rural community, and we're getting these impacts are felt in our community. So I know there's others on the call who feel that, and I just want to encourage you to find a way to share your story. Do it in a smart way. Talk to your staff community, talk to your partners, but share your story and continue with those relationships. Let's, like how Molly said, let's be creative right now.
And I just kind of want to add on to that, as that, you know, we are hearing over and over again from all three of us panelists that one of the biggest things that we can do as leaders, not only from the environmental side, but on the historical side, is communicating. Whether it's communicating to your public and trying to find out what they want to learn about, but also more importantly, if you want to start implementing these environmental impacts or changes within your institution and your staff, ask your staff what they care about. Do they want to see rain barrels on the property? Do they want to see composting? Because the more you include people in that conversation, the stronger of a connection that you're going to have. And we all have to remember, none of us are brain readers. None of us can read each other's mind. So if we don't share those stories or the impacts that we're feeling from those funding and what's happening on a federal level, nobody will know that. And in the more I'm a huge person for being honest, and the more honest that you are, the more the public, your staff, your volunteers are going to respect it. Because you're not just saying there, everything's great, because everything is not great. And if you're just saying that, nothing can be actually worked on and nothing can be built together. And I think that is the key thing that all of us organizations have to think about right now. It's how do we work better and listen to our public? How do we listen to our volunteers? How do we listen to our staff to make sure that we are giving them the tools and the information that they need? And if we want our staff to start implementing these projects, we need to also do it ourselves. So if we ask our staff, hey, if we pay for your bus pass, will you take a bus over a car? Or, if we want those kind of like environmental things ingrained in our staff, we have to do it ourselves as leaders. We need to be the ones leading by example. And if we don't show that we care about this, why would the rest of our staff, our volunteers, or the community?
Thanks so much, Molly. And I know Adrian, I know we're coming up right up on the hour, and I'd like to close this out, but Adrian, just last thoughts.
No, I just wanted to say that, Molly and Cedar summed it up perfectly. It's cultivating our existing structures and communities, right, to really improve the resiliency, because we are going through shock right now. So as much as we can support each other on a organizational level, I think that'll help us support in our immediate community. So that's all I just wanted to leave off on.
Nice, thanks. Walter, do you want to close us out?
Well, sure. Thank you all for being so thorough about the answers and your answers.
You're going on mute a little bit, Walter. You might
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, when I look at the questions, are basically two big ideas: is the situation and how that impacts the work that you can do with all the attacks on sciences and all the data that is now going to miss because scientists cannot communicate anymore. So how do you deal with that? I think you have somehow addressed that by putting the guide into the chat, and but as you said, we will put it on the website for those who have missed that. You can go to the Museum Expert website and find that guide. That is our way to help to resist to that situation and give people the tools to work on environmental education. We don't have time to go back. I think that most of people have answered the question on how you this motivates your staff, right, to work on this thing. I think most of that, and I suggest Kimberly, if you're not satisfied with the answers, maybe ask us directly, and we will put you in touch with the speakers to have you given these answers. And then there is a whole aspect that we have not been addressing, and I was intrigued by the fact that we have someone from an art museum in here, and something that has always intrigued me. art museums with sustainability education. So that is maybe something that we should do in the future. Think about bringing art museums into the conversation. We speak about solidarity and reaching out into the community, but that's not only the schools, it's many other organizations who in their own right are working on these issues. So
I agree, Walter. And I think we have these exemplars. We have sort of a history center. We have a nature center in the Wild Center, and then we have a classic science center. So we're showing, you know, three models, but certainly the umbrella is much larger. So I think and also we'll capture some of these great ideas from the chat. I've saved the chat as well. So we'll do a summary in our newsletter and try to make a synopsis available on the website. And certainly this recording will be available on the website as well. But thank you to all of you, Molly, Cedar, Adrian, really appreciate your time and your expertise and your insight. Walter, always for your leadership and hosting. And thank you for all the attendees from across the country that were with us. And please feel free to encourage folks to find this recording on our website, museumexpert.org.
Thank you for having us. Take care,
Thanks so much,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank
Have
you.
a great
Please reach out if I know Cedar, myself, and Adrian, we are here
Yes.
to be resources. You know, this hour went by really quick. So if you need to brainstorm or have additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Thanks so much, Molly. And well,
Thank
if you're
you.
amenable, we can share your contact publicly too. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right.
thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
everyone.
Have a
Yeah,
great day,
Great
everyone.
rest of the day. Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye.